We are recording. This is the Friday Fireside. I am here with Evan Shapiro, and I think I pronounced that correctly, didn't I?
You did. Thank you very much. You do.
You taught me that some time ago. And speaking of some time ago, Evan, before we get into what in the world you're doing now, you can tell us a little bit about what you used to do.
Okay. How far back? I mean,
I met you at AMC.
My first job was shoveling shit in a horse barn.
Okay. I first met you at AMC, and then you were at NBC Universal, and
Yeah. So So my first television job was actually at Court TV.
Okay.
And I was technically the head of marketing there, and rebranded them around forensics. This is as they were transferring to a crime and investigation channel under Henry Schleif.
Yep.
And then I became head of marketing at IFC, and 10 months later was made head of IFC, general manager of IFC, and took them from about 25 million homes to about 80 million homes.
Wow.
Independent film channel to really a predominantly comedy-based channel. Simultaneous to that, I led the acquisition of Sundance, back then Sundance Channel, now Sundance TV. And I ran both of those for a number of years. And then I left and went to work for Jeff Skoll at Participant Media, where I started a television division and created a channel called Pivot. Ran that for a number of years, and then moved to NBC and started NBC Universal's first streaming direct-to-consumer service called CISO, which I was very proud of. We made about 30 shows and got to about 250,000 subscribers in less than a year. And then NBC lost their nerve on that. And I left there and went out on my own and started producing. And I've been producing on my own for about 2 years when the investors in National Lampoon approached me about taking over the brand and rebuilding it around today's type of comedy. And that was almost exactly a year ago.
Now, when I look at your LinkedIn profile, I see actually on IMDb, I see a lot of executive producer credits, which would lend folks to think that you're a content guy, but you're a content guy and a marketing guy and a manager, a distribution manager and business manager.
Yeah, I mean, look, I got into the business. I moved to New York after dropping out of college. And I came here to write and direct. And so I've always wanted to be a creative executive or a creative, artist, frankly. But I had to trick the world into thinking I was a business person in order to get the responsibility of creating content.
Okay, I get that.
I went into marketing, which first in theater and then in television. Basically to get enough credibility in the marketplace to the point where somebody would allow me to produce again. And, what I like to say is I teach business people about content and I teach artists about business, and I sit in between the two. But I'm much more in tune and much more happy creating content than I am, sitting in a room with lawyers and accountants.
I get that. Stay away from the suits. Okay, so, and the bean counters, by the way. And I have my own opinion about lawyers, mostly if your lawyer doesn't give you the right answer.
But I would also, I would also say, I also really, there's a parallel track through all of this, which is education. So for 20 years, I've been involved with the Ghetto Film School. And then for the last almost decade, I've been teaching at NYU. I'm starting a new class at Fordham in the fall. And I try to treat my LinkedIn feed as a, classroom type of environment where I'm posting things about the business, but also, frankly, lately about, discrimination and the institutional racism that our industry and our country, but specifically our industry, holds without necessarily kind of agreeing to address it. But I also, lecture about millennials and Gen Zs to companies and actually governmental associations who will have me talk about those things as well. So, I really try to wake up stupid every day and try to learn something new through the course of any given 24-hour period when I'm not sleeping. So, you know, it's hard to say exactly how I would describe myself, but I definitely feel that, you know, someone who is dedicated to being a change agent in the media industry is really where I've tried to position myself, you know, especially for the last decade.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, so tell us a lot actually, about National Lampoon. We all grew up with National Lampoon. We all know how to eat mashed potatoes and, you know, squeeze them out like Bellucci. There you go.
Yeah.
I would ask you to do that on camera for us, but, you know, you'd make a mess, and you got that nice piano behind you, and we don't want to do that. But so National Lampoon, you own the brand, you own the content.
Yeah, to a certain extent. So National Lampoon was founded 50 years ago this year.
Spin-off from Harvard Lampoon, and that's
it was a kind of license from the Harvard Lampoon. So a bunch of Harvard escapees started a magazine with Maddie Simmons, who was in the schmata business mostly, and they founded this magazine to basically become the subversive voice of comedy in the United States. And they were all in their 20s and, you know, really kind of rebellious young, mostly men, one or two women, Ann Beats being the kind of most notable woman amongst the original crew. And they were moderately successful for a little bit, and then it really began to take off, especially when they started the National Lampoon Radio Hour in a closet in the offices there. And, you know, when you look at everything successful that National Lampoon has ever done, it has, you know, really two major things in common. The first and foremost is that it does lampoon. It takes the things that America holds most dear and fucks with them.
Yep.
And I call that twisted mainstream. So when you look at the magazine itself, you know, the most famous cover, which is now our logo, buy this magazine or we kill this dog, to the cover with Alfred E. Newman in a Vietnam vet My Lai massacre uniform. They really attack everything that America treats as a sacred cow. So that's thing number one. And thing number two, pretty much everything that's ever been successful starts in a small kind of safe experimental environment of comedy, experimentation, for lack of a better word, and then balloons up into something larger. So the magazine was really just a lark, to be honest with you. It started as the college newspaper, and then these guys kind of did a magazine, a glossier version of it. And then it became, really the voice of American subversive comedy culture at its height. That and Mad Magazine kind of on parallel. The radio hour started in a closet at the offices with John Belushi, Gilda Radner, Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, Christopher Guest, Harry Shearer, Paul Schaefer, Michael O'Donoghue. And then basically Lorne Michaels took them all and turned it into Saturday Night Live, almost verbatim.
Wow.
And then Vacation started as a short story by an advertising copywriter named John Hughes in the magazine. And then that became their most famous movie franchise of all time. And if you look at that really does personify kind of Lampoon National Lampoon at its very heart. Started as a magazine article or short story about John's family vacation to Disney World, and became this great movie which attacked the family vacation at its very core. Dad's looking to get laid, they killed the old lady, they dragged the dog behind them. Animal House started as a really crazy fake yearbook project called the 1964 yearbook, and it became Animal House. So when I looked at when my business partners asked me to kind of reimagine the brand, I went at the heart of all of those things. I did a lot of research and figured out what makes Lampoon important or relevant today. And there were a lot of years after Doug Kenny fell off a cliff looking for a place to jump after Caddyshack, where the ownership and management of National Lampoon was just terrible. It went from being kind of incompetent to being illegal. The last two people who ran National Lampoon went to jail. for securities fraud. And my business partners bought it kind of out of hock almost, and wanted to reinvent it, but they didn't necessarily have the television or digital or comedy background to make that happen. And so what I decided to do is build it around this twisted mainstream approach with the idea of a safe haven of experimental comedy with, comedic genius rebels. And the big change was to simply put it in the hands of the artists who were left out 50 years ago, people of color, women, queer writers and artists, gender fluid folk. Really the disenfranchised members or, kind of people of our traditionally unheard voices of American popular comedy culture until very recently. And if you look at National Lampoon Radio Hour, which was our big first tentpole project, it harkens back to the original National Lampoon Radio Hour in its form and its sense of humor and its subversive, twisted mainstream approach. But the writers and performers, 10 people who write and perform on the show, as the original crew did, are, almost entirely either queer or people of color or women. I think there's one cisgendered straight white dude on the entire crew. And it is also the smartest, most subversive writers and performers that we could possibly find. People like Cola Scola, people like Joe Firestone, people like Rachel Pegram, Lorelei Ramirez, Alex English, Aaron Jackson, Martin Urbano, Meg Stalter. These are really inventive, comedic rebels. And our one big direction to them was attack mainstream. Don't do niche. I think the show I'm probably best known for is Portlandia, which I'm very proud of. But at the same time, as much as I love that show, it's a relatively niche program. Another show that I really love called Please Like Me. Anybody who sees that show really, really adores it, but it's relatively niche. We wanted to take on and really fuck up America's sacred cows. So there's a sketch about The Bachelor, where all of their, penises get cut off. There's a sketch about the Super Bowl where the halftime show is a 94-year-old cabaret singer. There's a sketch about a dating show called Anyone But a Black Woman, where male contestants are asked to choose between a corpse and an African-American successful attorney, and they choose the corpse. It takes on all the taboos of America. It lampoons American mainstream culture with a serrated knife in the way that I would think would make Michael O'Donoghue and Doug Kenny incredibly proud. But it does so with the voices that are most relevant today. And it should be noted that we did that before the current wave of upset that made the Washington Redskins finally change their name today.
So, all right. I've seen some of it. Some of it is on target for me. Some of it is not. And that's part of the magic of that. How do you make money?
Charisma. I've actually been, the big central business thesis, and this is where kind of the art and commerce parts of my brain come together. The business thesis of this is to make things on very low risk platforms like podcasting, like digital video, like live.
Yep.
And then when they're successful, if they're successful, you elevate them and turn them into television projects. Okay. So before the world ended, we were about to take National Lampoon Radio Hour out and pitch it as a television show that was the alternative to Saturday Night Live. The show that we sold to Quibi started as a live show, then became a podcast, that then became a television show. We're launching a podcast next week called Roast of Your Teenage Self with a wonderful Latinx comedian named Elise Morales. And she interviews famous people about themselves in high school. And that started as a live show where Elise would bring up very funny people and have them do PowerPoint presentations of roasting themselves using pictures of themselves from their high school yearbook or from when they were in high school. This is a very good television format, and we plan once we make it into a successful podcast, to turn it into a television pitch that we can take out into the world. So, the idea is to create a content flywheel where you basically use your development as content to build audience, to build awareness, to generate revenue. Podcasting is a revenue generating business. And then the successful things you elevate to the next platforms, and the unsuccessful things you slit its wrist and bury it.
Interesting. Okay, so is this mostly New York? Is it?
No, it's all over the place. And the great thing about being small and nimble as a business is, we had a tremendous, very large development slate pre-COVID. And the day quarantine hit, we started producing content using these devices and sitting in this chair. So we've put out a new series called Stupid Heavy, which is featuring a wonderful comedian named Kelly Bachman, who became famous because she really took on Harvey Weinstein when he wandered into her comedy show last fall, and it went viral. And Stupid Heavy is a wonderful hybrid of podcasting, digital video, and television. It's on our Instagram feed right now. I think we have 9 episodes out. And the premise of the show is that Kelly interviews people about something dumb that they're obsessed with, like the Matrix movies or baseball cards or pro wrestling, and then pivots halfway through the episode and start talking about something, a trauma that they're dealing with currently. So there's one episode starring or featuring a guest named Youngmi Mayer, who's a wonderful Japanese-American comedian. Half of the show of her episode is about Instagram influencers who eat on camera. And then the other half of the episode is about her eating disorder, which was caused by a traumatic childhood. And it's a really wonderful therapeutic half hour of comedy and conversation. We did that at very low cost, almost no cost during lockdown. And as a consequence, we've sold it to a podcast company, which we can't announce yet. But we'll be launching that as a podcast later this summer. So we have a number of projects in that vein that we've been producing this way with wonderful artists. And it's been, great art comes during traumatic times. And we've really, I think, as a collective, the team, which is a very young ragtag team of rebels doing comedy, we've really found a way to produce leaning into the challenges that we're facing, yet continuing to champion the voices that are both hysterically funny and important to listen to.
It's interesting, and we're about out of time, but this has been fascinating to listen to. We are starting to see that there's a segment of the television audience which is appreciating the recording at home, celebrity, jazz, all that. And we know that 90% of what's out there is absolute dreck. Okay, it is unwatchable. But there are some gems, and these are very personal. What is a gem for you is dreck for me, and vice versa. You seem to be right in the center of the creative, the ability to create actually good, funny stuff using this squirrely format that, we're going to have this for a while. Television and everything else, this is going to be, hope to God it replaces Survivor and all those stupid contest shows, which I don't know about you, I don't get them, I don't watch them, I don't do anything. But if this became part of the 8 o'clock hour on network television, you could have lightning in a bottle here, bud.
Yeah, I mean, look, Twitch is the largest network on any given night. And TikTok far outpaced Quibi in its user base this spring. And so, the idea that things have to be produced a certain way to be relevant is bullshit. The greatest Trump impersonator on earth right now is not Stephen Colbert or Alec Baldwin or Anthony Atamanuik. It's Sarah Cooper, who makes TikTok videos that cut right to the heart of what an asshole he is. And she does it in short bursts using her cell phone. And so great writing, great concept, great art has never been dependent on huge production values. Vincent van Gogh made some of the most valuable art on earth with a paintbrush and a canvas.
Yep.
So we really need to remember that storytelling is about the story, not about the set.
Yep.
And not about the special effects, and not about the big name star. And when you look at the work that I'm most proud of, the first season of Portlandia cost $220,000 an episode. $220,000. The first season of Portlandia cost less than an episode of Space Force.
Less than, frankly, a minute of a lot of stuff that's out there.
That's correct. And so, while Game of Thrones is inarguably a wonderful television show, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend $15 million an episode to make a great work of art.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's a lot of the theory that we're bringing to the table. We also are not just making Instagram live videos. We are bringing television mechanics and television theory to these shows. If you look at Roast of Your Teenage Self, the trailer, which I'll post on my LinkedIn page, so you can click right over to it right now, or it's on my Twitter feed as well. Although if you go to my Twitter feed, it's even more political than my LinkedIn page.
How could that be?
Or if you look at Stupid Heavy on our Instagram feed, it has a lot of muscle memory reminiscent of television. So there are Pavlovian keywords and bells that make television more watchable that digital video and podcasting have been adopting. And when you listen to shows like The Daily or other really important podcasts of late, Serial, they share a tremendous amount with their television brothers and sisters. And so there are still Charles Dickens created the first serialized story, right? And basically since then, we've all been kind of repeating that same mechanism over and over and over again. So, you don't lose sight as you're struggling with the current environment. It's important not to lose sight of what audiences really respond to, which is character and story and pace and respect for their intellect. And really just the rudimentary basics of communication between an artist and an audience.
I get that. All right, Evan Shapiro, we're about done. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your time today. It's been instructive. I think our viewers are going to enjoy this. I'm going to hit the stop button and